Have you ever needed to explain why a payment failed, why a customer account was flagged, or why a compliance review was taking longer than expected, but you were not sure how to say it clearly in English? Well, welcome to Fintech English. I'm Coach Theo, and I help professionals communicate more confidently in English. In this lesson, you will learn 50 practical English phrases used across payments, risk, compliance, customer support, and cross-functional fintech teams. These are not complicated technical definitions. They're communications tools that help you explain status, uncertainty, controls, customer impact, and the next steps in a professional way. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so in this lesson, you will learn 50 practical phrases used across payments, risk, compliance, customer support, cross-functional fintech teams. These are not complicated technical definitions. They are communications tools that help you explain status, uncertainty, controls, customer impact, and next steps in a professional way. And as we go through the lesson, what I want you to do is pause after each phrase, repeat it aloud, and think about how you would adapt it to your own company, role, or product. By the end, you will have a professional phrase bank that you can use in meetings, customer conversations, incident updates, and internal reviews. Let's dive right in. So, fintech communication is difficult because one message often needs to work for several audiences at the same time. A customer needs a simple explanation, an engineer may need a specific technical description, a risk or compliance professional needs careful language that reflects what has been confirmed and what is still uncertain. A manager needs the customer impact, the operational impact, and the decision required. Strong fintech communication, therefore, does three things well. First, it explains the status. The listener should understand what happened, what is still being reviewed, and what happens next. Second, it controls the risk language. We should not describe an unusual transaction as fraud until the evidence supports that conclusion. Careful language protects accuracy and credibility. Third, it protects the relationship. Even when the company cannot immediately approve a payment or request, the professional can still acknowledge the customer's frustration, explain the process, and show ownership. The phrases in this lesson are designed around those three communication goals. Now, this lesson is divided into 5 sections with 10 phrases in each section. The first section is payments. These phrases help you explain payment status, declines, authorizations, settlements, refunds, and chargebacks. The second section is risk. These phrases help you discuss unusual activity, fraud, concerns, risk scores, controls, verification, and escalation without overstating what has been confirmed. The third section is compliance. These phrases help you request documentation, explain due diligence, refer to regulatory requirements, and document decisions. The fourth section is customer issues. These phrases help you acknowledge frustration, explain payment behavior, request verification, and show ownership. The final section is stakeholder communication. These phrases give you updates to engineering, operations, risk, compliance, and leadership. For each phrase, use this practice method. Listen to the phrase, pause the video, repeat it out loud, and then adapt it to a real situation from your work. That final step, adaptation, is what turns a phrase into usable professional English. We begin with payments because payment status is one of the most common communication tasks in fintech. The challenge is that everyday words such as pending, declined, authorized, captured, processed, and settled do not mean exactly the same thing. A customer may see a temporary authorization and believe the payment was completed. A team member may say the money was sent when the transaction is still in settlement. A refund may have been initiated by the company but not yet posted by the customer's bank. So the goal in this section is to use precise language while still sounding natural. Notice how each phrase gives the listener one clear piece of information: the current status, the responsible party, the expected timing, or the next verification step. Repeat each phrase aloud and pay particular attention to the key status words: pending, declined, authorized, captured, processed, settlement, refund, chargeback. Phrase 1. The payment is still pending. Use this when the transaction has not reached the final status. The word still tells the listener that the status has continued longer than expected. For example, the payment is still pending. We should not ask the customer to try again yet. Number 2, the transaction was declined by the issuer. The issuer is usually the customer's bank or card provider. This phrase clearly explains that your company did not make the decline decision. For example, the transaction was declined by the issuer and the customer may need to contact the bank. 3. The funds have been authorized but not captured. Authorization means the funds were approved or reserved. Capture means the merchant completed the payment request. This phrase is useful when a customer sees a hold but the transaction is not complete. Phrase 4. The payment has been successfully processed. Use this when your system completed the payment operation, but be careful. Process does not always mean settled. 5. Settlement is expected by the next business day. Use this to set a realistic expectation and replace next business day with the timing that applies to your product or market. So the communications goals state the status, name the responsible party, set the timing. If you like this information so far, please give us a like. Thank you. 6. We're seeing a higher than usual failure rate. This is a useful operational phrase because it reports a pattern without claiming that you already know the cause. For example, we're seeing a higher than usual failure rate for one payment method. 7. The customer may need to verify the payment method. The word may keeps the recommendation appropriately cautious. You can also say verify the card, verify the bank account, or update the payment details. 8. The refund has been initiated. This means your organization started the refund process. It does not promise that the money is already visible in the customer's account. 9. The chargeback is under review. Use this when a payment dispute has not been resolved. Under review is a professional way to describe an active process. 10. Let's confirm the transaction reference number. This phrase prevents the team from investigating the wrong payment. You can replace transaction reference number with payment ID, order number, case number, or merchant reference. Notice that these phrases avoid vague language such as the payment is somewhere in the system. They identify the status of the next action clearly. So the communication goal, report the pattern, recommend the next step, verify the record. Section 2, risk. Now, risk communication requires discipline. Professionals must identify potential threats, but they must also avoid presenting an unconfirmed concern as a proven fact. For example, unusual activity is not automatically fraud. A high-risk score is not a final judgment about a customer. A temporarily blocked transaction is a protective action, not a proof of wrongdoing. So in this section, notice the words that create accurate levels of certainty: possible, may, temporary, and words such as that, right, before proceeding. Another important idea is balance. Right? Strong risk controls protect the business and the customer, but excessive friction can also create payment failures, customer complaints, and lost revenue. One of the phrases in this section helps you communicate that trade-off directly. As you practice, think about how you would explain a risk decision to 3 different audiences: a fraud specialist, a product manager, and a customer support team member. Phrase 11. This transaction triggered our risk controls. This explains a rule or a model or system response that was activated. It does not say the transaction is fraudulent. For example, this transaction triggered our risk controls because the location and device were unusual. 12. The activity does not match the customer's normal pattern. This is a neutral way to describe behavioral change. It focuses on the pattern, not the character of the customer. 13. We need to review the account for possible fraud. The word possible is important. It signals a concern that still requires investigation. 14. The risk score is above the acceptable threshold. Use this when a numeric model or policy limit supports the decision. A threshold is the point at which additional action is required. 15. The transaction has been temporarily blocked. Temporarily communicates that the action can be reviewed or reversed. This is more accurate and less alarming than saying the account has been shut down when only one transaction is affected. Together, these phrases move from the trigger to the pattern to concern to the measurable threshold and finally to the protective action. The communication goals describe the trigger, avoid accusation, explain the control. 16. We have not confirmed that this is fraudulent. Use this phrase when the discussion is moving too quickly toward a conclusion. It protects accuracy and encourages the team to continue investigating. 17. Let's separate the confirmed facts from the assumptions. This is an excellent meeting phrase. It helps the team identify what the data proves and what people are only guessing. 18. We may need additional verification before proceeding. This phrase requests a stronger identity, device, payment, or account check without sounding overly dramatic. 19. The control reduces risk without creating unnecessary friction. Fintech teams often need to balance security and conversion. Unnecessary friction means obstacles that make the process harder without producing enough additional protection. Phrase 20. We should escalate this to the fraud operations team. Use this when the case requires a specialist decision. You can replace fraud operations team with risk committee, security team, compliance officer, or incident response team. These phrases help you sound careful, evidence-based, and action-oriented, the three qualities that make risk communication credible. So your communications goals are separate fact from fiction, request verification, escalate appropriately. So compliance language often needs to be firm, but it should not sound personal or arbitrary. A strong compliance explanation connects the request or restriction to a requirement, policy review, process, or jurisdiction instead of saying, we just need more documents. The professional can explain that customer verification is required, that the documentation does not meet current requirements, or that the account is subject to enhanced due diligence. This language also creates an audit trail. Decisions should be documented, information may need to be retained, and the team must be able to explain which policy or regulation applied. In this section, pay attention to phrases such as required, subject to, must, may require, retained, and until the review is complete. These words communicate obligation and process. Firm language does not need to be unfriendly. A professional can explain the requirement clearly, state what is missing, and tell the listener what must happen next. 21. We need to complete the required customer verification. Use this for know your customer, identity, business or account verification processes. Required makes it clear that the step is not optional. 22. The documentation does not meet our current requirements. This is more professional than saying the documents are bad or unacceptable. Follow it with the specific gap. The document is expired, incomplete, unclear, or from an unsupported source. 23. Please confirm the source of funds. This phrase asks where the money came from, and depending on the context, you may also need to ask for supporting evidence. 24. The account is subject to enhanced due diligence. Subject to means that a rule or condition applies. Enhanced due diligence is a higher level of review used when the risk requires additional information or monitoring. Phrase 25. We must follow the applicable regulatory requirements. Applicable means relevant to this product, customer, activity, or jurisdiction. This phrase helps explain why the company cannot simply make an exception. Our communications goals: explain the requirement, identify the gap, anchor the decision. 26. This case may require a suspicious activity review. The word may is important because the review has not yet been confirmed. Depending on the organization, a specialist team may determine whether additional reporting is required. 27. We should document the reason for the decision. This is useful whenever a case is approved, rejected, escalated, or handled as an exception. The record should explain the evidence and the policy basis. 28. The information must be retained for audit purposes. Retained means kept and preserved. This explains why certain records cannot simply be deleted after the case is closed. 29. We cannot approve the request until the review is complete. This sentence is firm, neutral, and process-based. It does not blame the customer or the reviewing team. 30. Let's confirm which policy applies in this jurisdiction. Jurisdiction refers to the country, state, province, or legal region whose rules apply. This phrase is especially useful in global fintech operations. Our communication goals: document decisions, preserve the audit trail, confirm jurisdiction. Section 4, customer issues. So customer communication is where technical accuracy and emotional intelligence must work together. A customer may be worried about a duplicate charge, a missing refund, a declined payment, or a security verification request. The professional must explain the situation in simple language without making promises that the company cannot control. A strong response usually has four parts. First, acknowledge the frustration. Second, explain what happened in plain English. Third, state the next step and the expected timing. Fourth, show ownership by documenting, escalating, or following the case. Notice that the phrases in this section do not over apologize or automatically accept blame. They acknowledge the customer's experience while keeping the explanation factual. Also notice the timing language. A company may initiate a refund, but the bank may control when it appears. A temporary authorization may disappear automatically, but the professional should avoid giving an exact time unless the process supports it. 31. I understand why this is frustrating. This acknowledges the customer's experience without saying that the company has already accepted responsibility. Say it calmly and sincerely. 32. Let me explain what happened to the payment. This gives the conversation structure. It signals that you will provide a clear explanation before moving to the solution. 33. The charge is pending, not completed. This corrects a common misunderstanding. Emphasize the contrast between pending and completed. 34. You have not been charged twice. Use this only when you have confirmed the facts. You may then explain that one item is a temporary authorization and the other is the completed charge. 35. The temporary authorization should disappear automatically. The word should is appropriately cautious. If possible, follow it with the normal time range and explain that the customer's bank controls the final display. These phrases are useful because they combine reassurance with accurate payment knowledge. The customer receives emotional acknowledgement, a factual explanation, and a clearer expectation. Communication goals are acknowledge the emotion, correct misunderstandings, and explain what happens next. 36. I'll check the status and explain the next step. This is a strong ownership phrase. It tells the customer exactly what you will do. 37. We have initiated the refund, but your bank controls the posting time. This separates what your organization completed from what happens next. It is more helpful than saying the refund is out of our hands. 38. For security reasons, we need to verify a few details. This makes the purpose of the questions clear. Avoid asking for information that the customer should never share, such as a full password or security code. Phrase 39. I'll document the issue and escalate it for review. This shows that the customer's concern will become a tracked case, not disappear after the conversation. 40. I'll stay with the case until we have a clear resolution. Use this only when you genuinely own or coordinate the case. If another team will take ownership, say, I'll make sure the case is transferred with the full details. Professional customer English should reduce uncertainty, not create new uncertainty. Communications goals are show ownership, clarify responsibility, commit to follow through. Section 5, Stakeholder Updates. So the final section brings the previous topics together in internal stakeholder communication. Fintech issues often involve several teams at the same time. Engineering investigates the system. Operations manages the workflow. Risk evaluates fraud exposure. Compliance reviews regulatory requirements. Customer support manages the customer experience. Leadership may need to approve a decision or understand the business impact. A strong update should answer 6 questions. What is the impact? What do we know? What is still unknown? Who is working on it? What decision is needed? Who owns the next action? Phrase 41. Here's the customer impact. This is an excellent opening for an incident or product update because it focuses attention on the consequence, not only the technical symptom. 42. Here's what we know so far. So far tells the audience that the information may change as the investigation continues. 43. The root cause has not yet been confirmed. Use this when the team has observations or hypotheses, but not a verified cause. This phrase protects credibility. 44. The issue affects a limited group of transactions. Scope matters. Replace limited group with the confirmed number, region, product, payment method, or time period when possible. 45. We are working with engineering to identify the cause. This shows active coordination. You can replace engineering with the relevant function: payment operations, infrastructure, risk, compliance, or a third-party provider. A strong update often follows this sequence: impact, known facts, unknowns, scope, and active investigation. Our communications goals: lead with impact, state facts and uncertainty, show coordination. 46. Compliance has asked us to pause the release. This communicates the decision and the responsible function without sounding argumentative. You can then explain the requirement that must be resolved. 47. Risk recommends adding an additional control. The word recommend shows that risk is providing a professional recommendation. The final decision may still belong to another owner. 48. Operations needs a clear decision by end of day. This states urgency and explains who depends on the decision. 49. Let's agree on the owner and the next action. This is one of the most useful meeting phrases in the lesson. It turns discussion into accountability. Phrase 50, I'll send a written update with the decision. Risks and timeline. This creates a complete follow-up commitment. A good written update records what was decided, which risks remain, who owns the action, and when the team will update again. The final 5 phrases help a team move from governance input to a decision, an owner, and a documented next step. Our communications goals are: name the recommendation, clarify urgency, assign ownership and timing. Now let's combine the language from the 5 sections. The situation is this: a customer's cross-border card payment was declined. The transaction triggered a risk control. Compliance needs additional verification. The customer is frustrated, and operations needs an update before the next release decision. So your goal: explain the status, avoid unsupported conclusions, request the next step, and confirm ownership. So pause the video and map out your answer, and then I will share a form for you. So here is one possible answer. Let's start with status. The transaction was declined by the issuer, and it also triggered our risk controls. We have not confirmed the activity is fraudulent. We may need additional verification before proceeding, so please ask the customer to confirm the requested details. I'll document the issue and send a written update with the customer impact, risks, and timeline. Your version does not need to be identical. The purpose is to combine the phrases naturally. So try again with a different role, pause the video, and say your versions out loud. Right? How would customer support explain it? How would risk explain it? How would a product manager update leadership? Depending on your situation and role, you can make the scenario custom to your situation. So you now have 50 professional English phrases for payments, risk, compliance, customer issues, and stakeholder updates. Do not try to memorize all 50 phrases today. Choose the section that is most relevant to your work. Repeat those 10 phrases, adapt 5 of them to real situations, and use at least one in a meeting, email, customer conversation, or status update this week. Remember, the main communication principles from this lesson: explain status clearly, separate confirmed facts from assumptions, connect compliance decisions to the applicable requirement, acknowledge the customer's frustration without making promises you cannot control, and always close stakeholder discussions with an owner or next action and a timeline. So if this lesson was useful, subscribe to Mastering English Communication, of course, for more professional English lessons. And also like, share, subscribe, and comment. It helps us help you. And I will see you next time as we continue our linguistic adventure together. Take care, everyone.